Although Newton laid the foundation for much of our modern scientific discoveries, in the next few minutes we'll discuss the discoveries of Sir Isaac Newton and their importance to us today. But first, when did Isaac Newton live? ICR biologist Frank Sherwin explains.
Isaac Newton was born on Christmas Day, the same year the Italian mathematical physicist Galileo died. He's been called one of the greatest names in the history of human thought, mainly because he discovered how the universe is held together. Newton was a solitary scholar, the chief figure of the scientific revolution of the 17th century, highlighted by his authoring Principia, the greatest scientific work in history.
To the average person, probably the most recognizable of Newton's discoveries would be that of gravity. John Reicha, director of ICR's museum.
He was just in the same situation as when formerly the notion of gravitation came into his mind. It was occasioned by the fall of an apple as he sat in a contemplative mood. Why should that apple always descend perpendicularly to the ground, thought he to himself. Why should it not go sideways or upwards, but constantly to the earth's center?
And thus the theory of gravity was born. Newton's work, Principia, is amazing. Frank Sherwin.
Also known as Mathematical Principles of Natural Philosophy, this incredible work consists of 3 books that's changed the face of science. It includes Newton's theory of gravitation and laws of motion.
John Reicha.
These laws are what we today call the inertial law.
These laws of motion may seem almost trivial to the average layperson, but they play a vital role in our understanding and ability to study the universe. And even the works of later scientists were built on Newton's work.
Although rejecting some of Newton's explanations regarding gravitation, Albert Einstein said that his own work would not have been possible without the discoveries of Sir Isaac Newton.
And the basis for much of Newton's revolutionary work was begun while he was still a student, before he graduated from the university.
English historians refer to a certain Annus Mirabilis, or Year of Miracles. It was approximately 12 months spanning 1665 to 1666 when the doors of Trinity College in Cambridge closed to all students, including the 23-year-old Newton, due to the plague. During this incredible year, Newton developed the theory of color. He invented the calculus that took modern mathematics above the level of Greek geometry, and proved the binomial theorem.
Probably one of the most important contributions that Newton made to modern science was his methodology.
First, he suggested, if something can be explained by natural causes, gravity, laws of motion, etc., then that's all the explanation we should seek, and not seek a supernatural explanation for what we've seen. 2. Newton said the same natural effects must be assigned to the same causes. 3. Qualities of bodies are to be esteemed as universal. And finally, propositions deduced from observation of phenomena should be viewed as accurate until other phenomena contradicted them. This 4th proposition probably led to the biggest revolution in science, that observation and experimentation are what would be foundational to discovering whether something is true scientifically.
Newton's work didn't stop with methodology, and he branched into many areas of science. Frank Sherwin.
Newton's investigations included mathematics, theology, mechanics, dynamics, optics, history, and chemistry. His achievements were legion. The theory of universal gravitation and his derivation of Kepler's laws, his formulation of the concept of force as expressed in the 3 laws of motion, the corpuscular theory of light. When it comes to the description of light, for example, Newton was able to explain why we see an ocean of green when we look over a lush forest.
This view of light was very different from traditional thought at that time. John Reicha.
Ever since the time of Aristotle, Newton proved this by passing light through a prism and breaking it up into the famous rainbow of colors that we're familiar with.
Although Newton laid the foundation for much of our modern scientific discoveries, he was a very eccentric person.
Newton seemed to be the typical view of the absent-minded scientist. He could stay focused on a problem for long periods of time without eating.
Newton was a great scientist.
He created the science of mechanics, the 3 laws that are basic to all physics. He explained the motion of the planets. He set the stage for future analysis in various fields of mathematics. He invented the Newtonian telescope, kinetic theory, electromagnetism, contributed to light and optics, conservation laws, He even seemed to demonstrate finally that scientific reasoning was the way to approach problems.
Voltaire wrote his famous book, Elements of the Philosophy of Newton, in which he popularized Newton's science. When Newton looks at the design of the universe, he says,
"When I look at the solar system, I see the Earth at the right distance from the Sun to receive the proper amounts of heat and light."
We hope you've learned something new about Sir Isaac Newton.